Best of r/malicious compliance episode 67. Subscribe for Reddit videos daily. Bit of context. I'm a second year history student in the UK. And last year, the head of history had the same name as someone I was abused by as a kid, so I struggled to go into his lessons. After my fiance went into university to explain this to him, he was completely understanding. See, I have really bad mental health issues. Depression and anxiety, PTSD, and id, as well as psychosis. The head of history last year was the nicest, most understanding person, and apparently all my fiance said was the basic: she has PTSD and got abused by someone with your name, so it's giving her a lot of flashbacks and anxiety kinda thing. Nothing with too much detail, and most importantly for him, nothing I wouldn't be comfortable with telling him myself when I was a little better. But alas, he left over the summer and we had a new hoe. Now this guy taught us last year, and he was alright. He witnessed one of my alters stick up for me when I was being bullied in the lecture, and he started to stick up for me too. I had to write him an email explaining that I have mental illnesses and sometimes they causes me to be late. Dissociations are a sucker for this, and sometimes I can't leave my house, and he thanked me for clearing things up. But this year is different. We all joke about how the power has gone to his head now that he is hoe. We're all in a group chat for history because it's just easier sometimes, and I noticed that he was refusing people extensions on mental illness basis because you need to get help, not an extension, and I don't see how this will stop you from completing the assignment by the deadline. This happened a good 6-7 times, which is pretty bad since our class is small. So I emailed him because I got physically sick about 2 weeks before my deadline and I couldn't get a doctor's appointment. He said as long as I provide as much detail as possible, he'll give me a week to make up for the week I was sick. His tone came across as if you're making me do this then fine, but I'm not happy about it. The issue came during the week leading up to the deadline. My mental health was awful. I was having intense flashbacks pretty much every hour or so. Panic attacks. My fear of germ and bugs came back full force, so I couldn't go outside. I was still taking my meds. I planned to go back to counseling once I could leave my house. I just needed time. And I could not do anything when I was having flashbacks. So my fiance cuddled me until I napped, and off he went to explain to Ho that it got really bad and I might need an extension, but I might not even be able to apply for one because I can't do anything right now. Ho apparently just rolled his eyes and said that I have to apply for the extension 3 days before the deadline. This is wrong. The policy is 24 hours, and I had to provide as much detail as possible, and if I didn't, I couldn't get an extension. So I got better enough to do a few admin tasks, call my parents and the doctors, reply to emails, etc. I emailed Ho and asked him exactly how much detail he wanted in my extension form. He replied with as much as possible. I triple checked with him. If I've learned anything from Reddit and watching r/, I know that I need a paper trail. I sent him my extension form detailing how I was physically, emotionally and sexually abused as a child, and that started in January, so I wasn't having a great month. I went into detail how I had to go to hospital because my abuser broke my arm, punched me in my throat, etc. I provided him with the dates and the hospitals in case he wanted to check. Sometimes, most of the time, having alters really is a blessing. I then went on to say that it's coming up to the date where I got raped by my ex on our first date, also in January, and I again provided him with the location and date but warned him that when I called up about it, I got told that I was trying to ruin someone's life and hung up on, so maybe he'll have better luck than me, and if he does, let me know. I went on and on and on about how January is and always has been the worst month for my mental illnesses. I explained that just like a physical wound, if you aggravate it, it's going to get worse, and my triggers are the smallest things. I also made the point of adding that I was on medication but they dropped me to the lower dose because of seizures, and I am 100% planning on going back to counseling when I leave the house. I then went on to explain how when I was really little, I got bullied a lot. They used to put bugs in my food, my hair, my bag, anywhere they could. So now I just can't go outside when my mental health is bad because I'll have a panic attack if I see an ant or a spider or something that's inevitably going to be there as soon as I step out of the door. Between me and my whole system, we went into some pretty intense detail overall. He gave me an extra 2 months for the assignment I was applying for, and an extra month for one that I thought I would be able to get in on time. He was only technically allowed to give 3 weeks tops, but I'm not complaining. He also apologized a lot over email, asked if he can let my lecturers know I won't be in, and when he saw my fiancée next, he apologized if he came across as uncaring. Thank you, next. Not sure if it completely fits, but I hope it does. So, last year I worked, with a friend, as interns at the communication department of my university. The whole department had 4 permanent workers plus the manager as in head of the department and the super manager as in the person highest in the hierarchy of the office who made the connection between the department and the presidency. The interns were responsible for all the video and photography. The university has 8 faculties and we, the interns, had to sort out what events needed to be covered and let the facilities know we would be there as well as schedule interviews. We were really responsible for everything, including booking the car, driving to the places and whatnot, from day one. Keep in mind, this was our first real job. The manager was the person responsible for our internship, meaning that everything we did or were asked to do had to go through him and get his approval. The manager was also supposedly the guy who was the expert in video and photography, hence being in charge of our internship. He bragged many times that he was good and had a lot of work done and published and exhibitions and whatnot. Thing is, he seemed dumb as a rock. He couldn't manipulate pictures beyond adjusting basics as brightness and contrast, and he couldn't edit a video to save his life. He was also constantly contradicting himself, and this became relevant with a policy around working overtime. According to him, if necessary, we should work overtime or weekends even, but it was up to us to decide if we wanted to. This was discussed in the interview and in our first day. The hours were to be compensated as time off in days where we had little or no work to do. We kept an Excel sheet that he could barely comprehend, updated with the hours, what they were for, and when we compensated them. It got to a point where we had summed up 3 days in overtime and he went nuts. Said it was unnecessary, that we shouldn't have covered most events, even though he knew about them, as we had to present him with a sort of report on what we wanted to cover, and that, from that moment on, everything had to go through him, as it already was. It was not our fault he didn't pay attention to the things we wrote. So here comes the malicious compliance. As my colleague and I were sick of him, for many reasons other than these, we decided to not work overtime ever again. Because we were not forced to, and we were only doing it for the best interest of the department, as we were not getting paid extra. In the following week, there's this important opening of an exhibition from the theater faculty, and surprise surprise, it's at night. So my colleague and I stick to our decision and we both say we can't. Well, it was so important that even the super manager begged us to go. We couldn't. So the manager had to go, as he was the only other who was good with video and photography. Except he wasn't. He filmed the whole thing with the wrong shutter speed, so the entire video had 2 green stripes across it. He didn't know how the sound recorder and lapel microphones worked, so he took a Rode mic to attach to the camera. Didn't manage get that one to work either, so he simply used the camera sound. Overall it was a shit show. I was asked by the super manager to correct the video as well as possible. I could have made more, but I didn't, as his name was in the credits and I thought he deserved that kind of credits. It took weeks to upload the video because it was just too bad. This way we proved to him that we were much better at our job than he thought we were, and he proved to be a useless person in that office once more. I quit not much later. TL. Doctor worked in video coverage in the communication department of a university. Manager was annoying us about overtime. We stopped doing it. He had to film an event on his own. It was the worst video ever filmed. Edit for paragraphs. Thank you. Next. For your information, super petty story. My sister and I are at a Costco, waiting for our pizza order. At most Costcos, the filled pizza boxes are stacked on a counter with the number of the order written on the side. We saw that our order was ready, but nobody called out our order number, so we went to the counter to ask about it. Granted, the food court line, as usual, is really busy. However, while the other cashiers were scrambling around like headless chickens trying to fill orders, one employee was casually hanging around and on his phone. We asked him about our order and, without even bothering to check the order, tells us that it's not ready and that he'll get to it when it's done. We politely pointed out that our order number was clearly written on the box and he loudly responds, MAAM, IT's not ready. I'll get to IT when IT's done. Then he promptly resumes to play on his phone. 5 minutes later, he shuffles over and hands me the pizza box. I said thanks, but I was clearly annoyed. He then says snarkily, "If you're unhappy with my service, feel free to talk to my manager." I was pissed and feeling petty, so I promptly went to customer service. Apparently, this particular employee has been a huge pain in the ass to a lot of customers, because the manager went back to the food court counter and told the employee to see him after his shift is over. The employee glared at me as I smiled sweetly, waved goodbye, and left with my food. Thank you. Next. A few years ago, before I moved my way up into engineering, I was a machinist. One of the most common tools of the trade are calipers. I had purchased a fairly nice pair of digital calipers since they were my main tools aside from the more accurate $100 K equipment. The company paid for all the calibration needs for everything, even if they were your own personal equipment. They would not pay for personal equipment that was broken due to negligence, which is completely fair. We have this guy that always has an attitude. No matter what, he's always complaining about something. He likes to go to each department that his parts are incoming from and check the parts to make sure they are to his liking. I didn't run his parts too often, but when I did, he was making his way towards me like clockwork 3 times a day. Freaking annoying. When he did, he would pick up my personally owned calipers and use them. Now I didn't mind because I didn't want to give him another thing to complain about until he started tossing the calipers down. First time I seen him do it, they bounced on my bench a bit. I flat out told him, "Don't toss those around. They are expensive and they are my personal calipers." He walks away spouting something off under his breath. He did it a second time. I reminded him that they were my personal set and if he was going to be using them, he needed to respect them. He muttered, "It won't hurt them. They aren't meant for accuracy." Sure enough, the third time is a charm. He came over being nosy and tossed my calipers on my bench after using them. After the third time, I went to the supervisor and had a chat with him about these incidents. He pulled the employee in question in and talked to him. The next morning, I was doing my reference checks on the parts and sure enough, here comes Mr. Attitude marching his way into my department. I tried to quickly grab my calipers up and replace them with my spares, but I didn't get the chance. He picks them up and he finishes checking what he needs and tosses them down. At this point, I'm biting my tongue. As he walks away, I pick my calipers up and my screen is messed up and doesn't read out. At this point I'm fuming, so I take the calipers to my supervisor and told him he did it again and they're broke now. Supervisor tells me that he told Mr. Attitude that he breaks them he will buy them. Sure enough, a week later I received a brand new pair of calipers, same ones, ordered by the company and pulled out of Mr. Attitude's check. From that day on, he brought his own calipers whenever he needed to check something. I guess he didn't want to be short $350 again. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind Redditor. Thank you. Next. 10 plus years ago, rural Australia. This tale takes place on a big, very profitable fruit farm. Over 100k trees of my favorite fruit. It's about the moment I deliberately caused the most monetary damage of my electrical career. If that is your interest, read the story. I think it's funny and instructive. It may even save your life one day. I'm also pretty sure you won't get the bad feels. I want to tell this as it happened, in rural Australia. It'll contain Aussie lingo, strain, and semi-technical info about water production. I tried to keep it all relevant. It also has a few numbers. Very fine, lovely numbers. I'll try to explain and put things into context. If you don't like numbers and context, or Aussie lingo, sorry, but we probably shouldn't go to the pub together. Background. After 2 years of planning, digging, inevitable plan revision, lots of pipe work, and much work by many people, this project was about finished. We'd already run the bore to an open head, flushing the column of drilling remains. We ticked off some of the electrical checklist, and were finally ready to water the trees. What's all this now? A bore is a water well. It's used for bringing the underground water to the above ground. You can use a bore for crop irrigation, or drinking water for livestock and people, or, I'm sure you get what a bore is. If you want to make a bore, find an aquifer, underground water. then drill a hole, column, then get a pump, motor, pipe, power, shovel that down the hole. Now you have a bore. Because this is Australia, bore can refer to the whole show, or just the pump and motor. Everything above is simplified, of course. Some stuff, like soft starters, pressure switches, standing water levels, head pressure, has been omitted, because story. The whole process is fascinating and complex. Look into it, or make friends with a water engineer. Engineers are awesome. The main cast, 16 bore, had 16, 40 cm diameter heavy duty lay flat hose, pipe, connected. From memory, Danish, 220 kW/295 HP motor, 3-phase 415 volts, 300 amps, kilowatts and horsepower, literally 295 actual draft horses worth of power. Horses are things my ex loved more than me. The stainless steel motor and pump, connected, were about 6 meters/19 feet long, and could pump out 120 liters/s, 32 gal/sec. 120 L/s is the magic in this tale. 16 diameter of water comes out at 120 liters per second. If my maths are correct, you could fill an Olympic pool in about 5 hours, or a 6-person spa in about 7 seconds. Big water. 220 kW is a decent sized motor. Let me illustrate. On another farm, we had a similar motor. It dramatically faulted one day, and the fault current started an auxiliary generator at the local power station. We never knew the actual fault current. The readout only had 3 digits and read 999 amps. The individual power cables to the bore were about an inch thick each, and broke lots of zip-ties when they jumped in the tray. Enough to say, big power. Owner in this story is his first/Christian name. He was a great older guy. Smart, hard-working, caring, generous. He had a flaw though. Sometimes he'd listen, but mostly he kinda knew everything. He was also a top-notch older larrikin, fun-loving, mischief-making maverick. Great bloke and seriously wealthy. He also gave us fruit. Bloke, usually a male, usually a good person. Egg, Jono is a good bloke. Larrikin, not used much anymore today. Well-meaning larrikins are loved in Australia. Everyone should have a larrikin mate. Egg, Davo, yeah he's a dead set larrikin. Mate, everyone can be a mate, regardless of gender or age. Also, tools can be a best mate. A tree can be a mate. Anything really. Dogs are most definitely mates. Cats are cats. When you're inebriated, mate is pronounced mate. Mate. Me, electrician. I'd been doing work at this farm for a few years at this point. My company even longer. We maintained everything, including the large automated sorting/packing plant. We got along well with everyone. I installed things, fixed stuff, and ate fruit. Ensemble actors, farm manager, leading hand, 3 farm hands, 1 other Sparky, 2 apprentices, including Scotty, all set, new big bore, group of sweaty blokes, big water, big power, larrikin owner. Story. It had been a long, hot, humid job getting this bore and its power/controls in and connected. The bore went 50 meters, 164 feet, down the hole. A big crane put it in. All stages of the build were triple checked at every point. This is simplified. To add the rest would take up space and not be relevant. Non-relevant stuff like spanners hitting knuckles, swearing/cussing, Scotty getting megged, wasps, major swearing, Scotty almost crimping my hand, Scotty getting megged again. Look up 1000 volt analog insulation resistance meter later. Don't worry, all apprentices cop this at some point. Scotty is fine and was an excellent apprentice. The scene. The bore is connected to the above ground main irrigation pipe work, about 1 meter/3 feet off the ground. The 9 of us are standing in the designated safety area near the big control cabinet, about 7 meters/23 feet away. Owner pulls up in his farm toy. His words, not mine. A shiny 4-wheel drive wagon, engine running, lowers the driver's side window, and says, Owner, excitedly, how's it going fellas? He's parked on the other side of the bore from us, about 3 meters/10 feet away from it, on a gentle slope coming off the bore's concrete pad. on a big, wide line of big rocks and gravel tamped down on the ground. This line of rock and gravel extends to about 50 meters, 164 feet, from the bore pad. This is the absolute, capital W, worst place to stand or park at a bore, let alone a bore this size. I've told Ona to never stand there, at a bore, a number of times over the years. I've told Scotty to never stand there too. Scotty followed directions. He's aces. Some readers have already guessed what's going to happen. If you live/D on a farm, or work/ed with this gear, you know the star of the show is yet to be introduced. Me, friendly owner, we've been through this. That's the worst place to park. Can you move down the road where the other vehicles are please? Owner shuts off the car, gets out, closes the door and walks the 3 meter to the bore. The window is still down. He's standing right in front of the star of the show when he says, "Owner, all American why yeah, you've been saying that for years and nothing bad has happened." Me, now very serious, Jesus. Don't stand there. Get over here. Remember when you wanted more water? Gimme more water? You know this is double any of the other bores. That car is going cop it and I get cut off by owner. Owner, walking over to us. Friendly mocking tone yeah, you keep saying that. Anyway, are we ready? He goes to raise his arms. I stop him. He likes to get all dramatic when a big machine is turned on. He's really a top bloke. Me, not yet. I can't turn the bore on with your car there owner. Owner, full on friendly mocking mode. Sparky afraid of a little water? Want me to push the button? Then kinda just bored like, just push the button already. Farm manager is having no part of this. He keeps his mouth shut. He's clever, and is also aces. I turn to the group. Me, can we all agree that I tried? I get nods, and yeahs, and yeps, and an aha. Scotty doesn't know. He's never seen anything like what's about to happen. He just dutifully says yes. Okay, I may have named him Scotty just for this moment. Here we are. Dear reader, this is the exact moment. I'm thinking, owner needs to see this. He really needs to see what star of the show can do. It's the only way I can keep him from being killed by it. It has to sink deep into his head. I knowingly put my finger on the green button. From where we're all standing, we can clearly see the bore, the shiny, fully optioned, $110 K plus, late 2000s, 6-month-old, Toyota Sahara. I ask the other Sparky to watch the control panel screen. Me, to owner, now. Dear reader, please let me introduce the star of the show. Pressure release valve. From here on, valve. Valve is about a foot tall, made of brass, and is the bore's little brother. He's fitted into the above ground main steel pipework. Valve's mouth is pointing right at owner's car. He's there to vent air. But, valve also vents water. Because, among other reasons, as an irrigation line fills, at some point it can/will go over pressure before it stabilizes. If the water goes over pressure enough, it makes the water angry enough to hurt the line and/or the expensive gear. Valve lets the angry water out and looks after his brother. Remember the numbers, and the maths? That was all for water going out an open 16 hole. Valve's mouth was a 4/10 centimeters aperture hole. This would be like turning your garden hose on, then putting your finger over the end to spray your kids. We're all on the same page now. This should be fun, right? Let's see what Valve does. MaliciousCompliance. Me, to owner, now. Owner, raises his arms on high and yells, "Give me water." He really did this. I push the green button. The control cabinet lets the electrons flow in an orderly fashion. No smoke. Valve whistles his tune for a while as the air comes out. Then the water starts. It gurgles and splutters for a while. Once the air is gone, it's just water. And it doesn't take Valve long for the water to be a 4 dead straight column, going right through the open window, and absolutely pounding into the passenger window. Under these conditions, when Valve has nothing in the way, he can ignore gravity for a while and make a solid 4 column of water go dead straight for about 5 meters/16 feet before it starts to curve. See? Valve is awesome. Valve gave owner's car the good news for about 5 minutes. The rear view mirror tried to escape about the same time the engine stopped. It flew out the window, but Valve had a strong volley game. As the line stabilized and the pressure dropped, Valve started to close. Valve's water left the now shinier car, making a nice decreasing arc across the rocks, then stopped. Ozzy's swearing here. /S from the group I heard 2 fuck me's, 3 fucking hells, 1 fuck my brown dog, and a holy snapping duck shit. Scotty, almost reverently, wow. Owner, quietly, with amazement, bugger me. Aftermath. Owner wrote the car off. The assessor asked if it had rolled into a dam. Owner said he learned a valuable lesson. He now parks his toys 20 meters / 65 feet away. Owner now has great respect for Valve. Me? We took home lots of mangoes. And I got to tell you the tale. Scotty? Scotty grew into a capital T tradesman. We are still friends. Valve? Did his job for years to come. Every time I went to that bore, I gave him a pat. He was a good Valve. That was long, and lots of fun to write. Sincerely, thank you for reading my tale of rural Australia. Hope you enjoyed this even half as much as I did at the moment. See yas later. Thank you. Next. So I was working at a locally owned cell phone repair store, and although I was the only person at this location who had any knowledge of phones, the owner's sister had been given the title of manager. A little background on the owner's sister, let's call her Meg. She was 37 at the time and had never moved out of her parents' house. I had talked to her about this before, and it goes way beyond what you might be thinking. She had never done her own laundry, she didn't know how to cook, she had only just got her license to drive a couple years prior. The idea of moving out stressed her out because she didn't know how bills worked or who to call if she got hurt. You get the idea, right? She had been fired from every job she'd ever had for being on her phone at work. Despite being a manager at a cell phone repair store, she could not tell an iPhone 4 from an iPhone 8. This woman made rocks look smart. Anyways, onto the malicious compliance. She often made mistakes when giving people quotes or information on the phone, and I would do my best to quietly give her the correct info. Sometimes she was grateful for the help and other times she would shush me. Well, one day it was really bad and she kept giving out inaccurate information which was costing us repairs because people would drive to the store and I would give them the actual price, which was different than what they had heard on the phone. They assumed bait and switch, but really it was just ignorance on Meg's part. I admit I was probably a little frustrated with her, and that may have come across in my tone despite how patient I was trying to be. I corrected her once again on the info she was giving over the phone and she snapped at me to never interrupt her again. About half an hour later she got a phone call on her cell phone. She looked confused, but that was nothing new. I wasn't concerned until I saw her rummaging through her purse while talking to this person. She pulled out her social security card and gave them the number. I tried to get her attention, but she just glared daggers at me, so I sat back down and shut up. This phone call lasted close to half an hour. She gave them her current and past addresses, her credit card number, her password, her PIN. She spelled out her name for them, it's very long and very Greek, and even have them her home phone number. I quietly sat through all of this and just kept working on the phone I was repairing. When she finally got off the phone, she turns to me and says, "That was the weirdest phone call. AT&T needed to verify my information." I said to her, "Why is that weird?" She said, "Well, I have T-Mobile." My jaw dropped. Like I knew she was stupid, but this was the moment I really understood that. I then told her she needed to call her brother because her identity had just been given away on a silver platter. Now crying, she says to me, "He is going to be so upset. My identity has already been stolen twice this year." TLDR. Manager told me not to interrupt her on the phone ever again and then proceeded to give all of her personal information away to scammers while staring daggers at me. Thank you. Next. TL. Doctor at bottom, comma. Years ago, I worked at Best Buy, BB, in the South. I took the job my first senior year of college, I think. It might have been my second. The job was actually pretty good. Co-workers were great. We didn't work off commission, so it wasn't cutthroat on the floor, and we were in an old Target, so we had a huge stock/backroom area where I worked, instead of putting things on shelves on the main floor, as most BBs did/do. I really enjoyed the job. It was okay pay for a college kid, and I worked mostly evenings as we'd restock when the store was closed. I even got a taste of Black Friday from the other side, and our managers were pretty cool about it. Bought us breakfast that day and just made sure we knew where to be during our shift, and to sell the hell out of batteries. But since I worked in the back, I most did inventory unless a customer bought something big and needed help loading it, or it needed to be brought from the back to the front. So even Black Friday was pretty laid back for me. Easy job for a kid who only took it cause he ran out of the extra money he took out as part of a student loan. Side note, kids, don't do this. Don't screw around with student loans. Also, please don't forbear loans. It's better to work 3 jobs than do that. I turned 50k of debt into 100k over a 2-year period of forbearing because I couldn't find a job. Onto the MC. Nearing the holiday/Christmas season, we had a pretty bad snowstorm, which for the south is any snowstorm, but this dropped around 18. Though I drove a Dodge Neon, I made it in without issue as I had lived in a northern state for several years and was comfortable with driving in the snow. Because of this, we were grossly understaffed, and our truck was late by a day or 2 and it threw off everything. This meant we were low on stocked items on quite a few areas of the store. This was back in the heyday of CDs and DVDs, before iPhones existed, and when HD TVs were stupid expensive. As a result, management decided to have the whole team come help unload and stock shelves when the truck arrived. This was after closing at 10 p.m. Of course people bitched about it the whole time. The store manager, finally having had enough of us kids, got on the PA and said, "If anyone would like to leave, now is your chance. I'm locking up until we're done with the truck." Which basically meant, stop whining or you can leave and not come back, but in a more subtle way. At this point, it was about 11:30 p.m. and the truck would easily take until 1 a.m. or later to fully finish unloading and stocking the shelves. So I did what apparently no one else thought was wise. I told my co-workers I was out and walked to the front. The manager looked at me like I was crazy and I said, "I've got finals coming up, and I don't plan on working for BB my whole life," and I walked out the door. I'm not sure if it was due to how taken aback he was, that he wasn't paid enough to care, or that he found my honesty refreshing, but I surprisingly wasn't fired. I did not study that night, but slept well and probably skipped my 8 a.m. class the next day. I ended up quitting a few weeks later when the semester ended because my loan was coming through so I didn't need to work. Did I mention I was a massive idiot? TL. Doctor, Boz tells us we could leave aka quit, as a way to get us to fall in line and stop complaining about a late shift. So did what he suggested and I left.